said, this is, this is not a course, this is not a lecture series, this is sort of a set of discussions which I'm trying to do on this COVID, which is something which is, probably the most important thing that has happened in our lifetime. And it is impacting everything, and the impact will be there for a long time. So this is an attempt to summarize some of the thought process which is going on. I am not putting any of my thoughts. I am just trying to put together the thoughts which are available in public forum. And this is a summary of what we know today. We don't know a lot of things. Even today, as we discussed yesterday, and you are reading constantly that where exactly the the incident started, though everybody is saying Wuhan and all of that, and how it got transmitted from animals to humans, it's still something unknown, right? And that is something which is probably behind us by 60-70 days, and we don't even know what will unfold going forward. So today, as I mentioned yesterday, I am moving. First I will probably take a minute to summarize what we discussed yesterday. Yesterday, we sort of looked at where this, the virus came from, the chain of events, the various players, primarily China, Wuhan. Wuhan is, you all know that there is a biomedical lab there, which is called which is actually a category 4 biomedical lab, which is the highest level. And many people suspect that this virus is actually being cultured there. All countries, primarily US and Russia, but including India, secretly or publicly, study these viruses. So there is a speculation that Wuhan lab also is one of them. So that actually makes the this conspiracy theory even more. Yeah, I'm just trying to mute Mr. Bhattacharya, because I think you can just look at, ensure that all of you, that you see this red mic with a cross.
Sir, I have one question, sir, regarding this.
Yeah.
Yesterday you discussed about the virus. The virus is
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Passive in nature, in the sense it is a protein protected with a fat, and once it is entered in the body, gradually it is becoming active. Is it
right.
The nature of the virus? Is it right?
And yes, any virus is like that. Yeah, go ahead.
It is normally when it resides on a metal, it's a passive, but when it enters the body, it is active.
Yes.
And it's covered with a fat, and that fat melts in a certain temperature, or with rubbing and all these things, the fats melt. So once the fats melt, the virus would no longer be that much destructive. And I would want to know more detail about the temperature at which virus would be inactive, and also today I have received an information that it may cover 13 feet instead of 1 feet earlier we have heard. So can you throw some light on that?
Yeah. So, I will not be able to throw any light, because, as you yourself has said that, there are new researches which are talking of new dimensions. Like yesterday, we talked about virus being airborne, but, I got a update from Shubhranshu that it is not airborne, it is in droplets. Airborne is something which is in aerosol format, and it can travel for a long distance. So it has not really reached there, but a lot of people are speculating probably it is also airborne. In fact, Wuhan, there are some research has happened in Wuhan itself, where they are saying that it is airborne, right? So it can go much beyond 1.5 feet. Some people in MIT has talked of 27 feet. Same way, that virus being active at what temperature, again, it's an open question. We all are hearing that, heat wave will possibly help us. May, June will be the time where India will be safe, but then it is not confirmed. And third point, as you rightly said, that, any virus to be active needs a host. So for this virus, yes, we are the host, unfortunately. And that is exactly how it operates. It gets integrated inside our cell and then forces the cell, take the resources of the cell to replicate itself. But there are millions and billions of types of virus we are exposed to. And for majority of them, we are not the host. And for some of them, we are host, but then it is not dangerous enough. But unfortunately, it is one of them which is, as they say that, if you hear that CDC interview, which I have given a reference of Dr. Fauci, he says that, it is not just something we are a host. Second is it is, dangerous, very, very, it is very contagious, and it affects the pulmonary system, which is, all three coming together is actually makes it very, very, rare, but at the same time very, very dangerous, because pulmonary system is a very vulnerable system to start with. Okay, so yesterday we talked about, this COVID, this word, what is COVID, COV2. We talked about, this H1N1, little bit of science, where it came from, which is the timeline, some of this controversy which is playing out, that, China was, late in giving the information and stuff like that. Then we looked at a lot of definitions, definitions like what is epidemic, what is a pandemic, what is the outbreak, what is endemic. And there was a bunch of readings which I suggested. This is the evolving science. And again, I say this, the reading part is something I am suggesting, because, it is going to dominate our life, not just our personal life, but professional and social life, surely for next couple of years, right? So whether you are, today, whatever is our role, if you are a student, you will face questions in the interview about it. You will have to go in organizations where people will be talking about it. You may have to take decisions. We all are, uh, in a position where some way or other we will be in deciding positions. We have to take calls. So it is important that, we know the subject reasonably well, and also important that we understand it, from credible sources, because there's so much of wrong information that can, if assume, Professor Mr. Siddhartha has talked about that, if 1.5 meters is, somebody assumes it to be 3 feet as 9 feet, then that business's whole planning, for that matter, for that whole society, the entire planning of social distancing will completely change. And if it is not based on right data, we might end up, spending a lot of money for which there is no return. So I'll proceed now. I will get into, what we said we'll discuss today. This slide, and I have shared the slide deck with you. See, while we say that there is lockdown, the government of India, National Security Council, the Prime Minister's office has come with a notification that these are the services which are going to be on, right? So financial services, we know, as we are talking, we know telecom companies are working, banking services, police, army, paramilitary forces, post and telegraph, fuel, water services, municipality services, and many others, essential services that declared, supplies of groceries, food, the entire, essential commodities, as they call, is actually being moved from one part of the country to the other. So if you take the numbers, and I have not done a calculation, you will find that maybe 30 to 40 million people are actually, because our army itself is 1.5 million, our paramilitary forces is another 1.5 million. If you take private security guards, which we all employ and they are all in duty, is another 1.5 million. If you take our number of doctors, 500,000, nurses, 1 million. So there are 30, 40 million people are actually on the battlefront, right? Which is keeping another 90 to 100, 900 to 1,000, sorry, if you take out the 50 to, it will be more than 50, another 1.2 billion people safe at this point of time. But even among this 1.2 billion, around 60% who are in the villages, and especially people who are on the agriculture, again they have not stopped their work, right? Because now is the time of harvest, and I understand that this year our uh, harvest is going to be very good. Challenge is of course harvesting it and transporting the food. But one good thing news that is coming out is that our crop, this yield is this year is a bumper crop yield. Um, so this is a number, this is a context I wanted to share on two counts. One is that we should be aware of who are the ones who are keeping us safe. We should also be aware that there is a substantial number of people, because of their profession, are willingly exposing themselves to the virus. And we have to be also be careful about, if they become carriers tomorrow, and we cannot guarantee because many of them are in front of patients, how that is going to affect the society at large, right? So this is a consideration. We don't have a solution. You have to do this, but this is there. But large majority of the business, economy is at a standstill today. So I have put the slide, next slide. I have not put a heading there. The left one is I have picked up from a website which is I think businessintelligence.com. I have shared this link yesterday, and I will suggest all students or all the persons, if you are looking interested in data, you can refer this site, because this gives amazing pictorial representation. So India is still a very small part of the global economy. If you look at US is $20 trillion economy, and we are $2 trillion, right? $21 trillion is USA. Now this is of course China is looking a little bigger than US, because this is a purchasing power parity. Now I'll not get into PPP what it is, but it's a sort of equivalence of the value of currency respective countries. So, but nevertheless, we are just looking today at the scenario in India, right? And that is, before looking into that, I just wanted to bring your attention to the graph on the right side, which gives a progression of India's GDP, gross domestic product, the split between the three sectors, three primary sectors. One is manufacturing, second is services, and third is agriculture. Now, if you see today that over the years, the portion of the share of services has increased in Indian economy. We all know that, anything which, including our education is service, telecom is service, retail is a service, financial services is a service, of course. Now, the good thing about, so one thing that has happened because of this is that large part of the economic activity, which is a services part, which if we have a very strong, protocol of how to do the business without getting into offices or workplaces, and if we have a very robust um, telecom network, including smart devices with the end users, then large part of the service business actually can be done in a non-physical, low touch, no touch manner. After lockdown, we have to start our businesses, right? So many of these businesses, like financial services, to some extent, or to a large extent, e-commerce or completely e-commerce, right? Which obviously are part of retail. Education, which we are part of. A lot of it IT, ITS, which was always part of, always a technology enabled service. Lot of these can be restarted, or they are already on at this point of time. I wanted this to be highlighted, that this is a sort of a blessing for us, because if today a large part of our industry would have been manufacturing, then manufacturing is a very, very physical activity. You have to bring in raw materials, you have to dispatch, what you have to produce it in a factory. You cannot sit at home and manufacture steel, then you have to dispatch it. And that is where, unless the virus is completely controlled, a manufacturing based economy would have struggled significantly. So today, if you see China, they are saying we have controlled the virus and they have started their manufacturing. But one is that the probably, assuming that they are telling the truth, they are lucky that they could control. But if it would not have been controlled, a manufacturer heavy country like China would have suffered much more than what India potentially will suffer going forward. Suffering is given. There is no two way about it. It is the quantum what matters. Now, having said that, let's look at some of the numbers or some of the guidelines which people are talking about what will happen. So there is this, the World Bank or Dun and Bradstreet, then IMF, everybody, including our own, the Niti Aayog and all, is telling that our economic growth will be at the best going to slow down, okay, to 1.5% to 2.8%. So today we are at 4.5%, which is of course much lower than what we had a couple of years back, but that's fine. But this is going to be, slowdown will happen. But there are estimates, and I will get into that. Everybody is making assessment, and I have given references, and I will suggest all of you should, look at some of them. There are estimates which are even talking of contraction of the economy, right? There may be potential cases of contraction of economy. So that is, that is essentially where, I am not remembering the term, but that is, where what you call is that, you have heard about this term called Great Depression, right? So where essentially, but there is a term for contracting economy. Historically, in 73 years, Indian economy has never contracted, but there is a significant possibility that our economy might contract because of this COVID. So net takeaway is that there is a outlook which is negative for sure. How bad it is going to be and what we can do to make it less bad than what it is on all of us. Okay, we cannot just say that let the policymakers decide, or let the ministry decide, or let the government decide. It is on all of us, including all the people who are on the call. We have to think, how do we make this economy better? Because the suffering will be enormous, especially a country like us. It will be something which we possibly can't handle very easily. The the next point, next slide, where I have taken two slides from this McKinsey. I'm sure all of you are aware of this McKinsey, which is the world's largest strategic consulting organization, which essentially having a $4-5 billion sort of revenue. McKinsey does great work, but I really find they are extremely good in, representing data through graphs. Like any consulting company, but they are cut above the rest. So any of the students, if you are from management, and if you have not referenced McKinsey reports, I would suggest that you look at them, especially how they represent data. Even very mundane data, they will represent very nicely. Now, of course, these are studies they have done. Now, when you look at this scenario, there are two dimensions of this. One is, of course, how do you control the disease, right? So we all have discussed yesterday about, this R0, the R naught factor, how quickly it can move from person to person, how many people can get affected. We talked about, if 100 people get affected, around 86% won't show any symptom. and only around 10% will be sick, and around 5% will need a ventilator. But there are some estimate that showed that even if 1% of the country gets affected in India, and 10% needs ventilator, we have just about 1.3 million hospital beds across the country, not just hospital, medical beds for 1300 million people, right? So even if 1% infection can actually bring our medical system completely at a halt just by one disease. But so government is trying to ensure that it doesn't go out of hand. So that is our main hope for India. Mr. Modi has again and again said that that is the thing which we are trying to do, because we don't have great healthcare system. The great healthcare system, like even Italy, which is second best in whole of Europe, also collapsed. Okay. The second thing is, of course, when you control or when it is manageable, how do you restart the economy? Because economy has come to a halt, as we also discussed, right? That out of we have around 500 million people working, actually 450 million people working, out of which only 40-50 million people are 450 million people are workforce, out of which only 10% are working in these segments which you talked about. Large part are actually inactive at this point of time. Now how do you start? And when you look at what is there in future, there is this convenient tool, very useful tool which you use, which you call scenario planning, right? So you look at what will be the alternative scenarios. And I have probably given, and I have given the link to this article also. It's around 20-page document maybe from McKinsey site, available to all of you. Please download and read it. It's essentially McKinsey's assessment of India's impact on economy. Now they have made three scenarios, that if the lockdown is up to 15th April, which is possibly Mr. Modi will be talking about. Second scenario is if it is up to 15th of May, one more month. And third scenario is that it is up to 15th of May, but then there are many cases where this infection comes back in various parts of the country. So you have to do local lockdowns. It can be one district, one state, whatever. So if you look at the scenario one, that lockdown is totally open after 15th April, which is unlikely. It says that the number of job loss that will happen will be 8 million, and we will be needing 300,000 crores of stimulus, that government intervention. And we'll discuss what government intervention we are talking about. Right now, the government has made a stimulus of 1,75,000 crores. So around 60% of the best case scenario. Even if we assume that it stops and there is no flare up and we have only these 800-900 cases. Second is the most likely scenario. So we'll probably not be there, but probably will be there up to end of April, if not middle of May, where there will be a 10 lakh fiscal stimulus, or the money has to be pumped in by the government in the system. And there will be a job loss of around 40 million, 4 crore people. And in fact, in US, they are saying that 80% of the jobs are actually on the block. Ours is like we are talking of 10%, because our economy is still very physical, right? And US is, companies are much more ruthless and we are very socialist in mindset, right? We don't let go people very easily. We just don't say, get lost and stuff like that. And third scenario is, of course, they have not talked about much. And on the right side, and that is where we'll get in our next call, segment by segment, that what are the segments which are going to be affected and how much. So obviously, we will have, can you see my screen? Yeah, okay. For a moment it went off. So airlines and hotel is something which we already have heard, because we know that airlines means you have to sit tight very closely with people. Even a domestic flight will be 2-3 hours plus airport. Same is hotel, you don't know the place. Then the other one is really people will be traveling less, as we know, so auto sales. And this is not just about the distance. It will be a combination of people will try to avoid both coming in touch with other people, and second is people will start saving money, because we don't know whether I will be earning tomorrow. I don't know whether I will have a problem, medical problem tomorrow. So I will stop doing everything which I can avoid. I will not travel for holidays. I will not go to hotel. I will not buy new cars. I will not buy new houses. I will not buy new clothes. But the areas which you can't avoid, if you look at power, the utility sector, or oil and gas, retail, consumer goods probably will consume less. uh, Agriculture is something which you can't avoid. Probably because of that, the impact will be relatively less, and it gives what percentage of the GDP that is, and of course bank credit percentage, and it also gives the number of people involved in each of the segments, right? So if you look at airlines in India, airlines has 8 million people, and there is a 75% contraction. So straight away you will find 6-7 million people will lose jobs, right? Because if you don't have money, no company will give you. It's not that it's not being a good employer or bad employer, right? And travel will dramatically reduce, because one is that I will avoid close space, all of us, and second is the countries are also not sure whom to admit. So India, as we discussed, India also will keep our travel restrictions, and every other country will, try to make sure whoever is coming to their country is, not carrying the virus, right? So, and we don't know, we don't have enough tests available, so we'll rather avoid, traveling, or rather prevent people from coming in unless it is very, very important or very less. But we'll get into each of the segments separately. Now, what are the challenges? And this is my last slide. As we all know that all of us are facing some way or other fund crisis. Salaries have been reduced. Many companies have deferred. Salary cuts have happened, and it is in the public news. It's going to happen because if the organizations are not making money, they are not going to where will the cash come from? And obviously in these circumstances they cannot borrow. Banks will not give you money because the risk is very high. But the biggest challenge which you have seen, that the people who are earning, so working as daily laborers, these are not just the people who work as contract laborers in agriculture, which is the migrant labor. Large number of them came back. But a large 97% of the people in India work in unorganized sector. So even if you look at a organization like Maruti, which is a large organization, Maruti plant in Gurgaon has 800 executives and 4,500 temporary labor, daily wage. That is how most of these manufacturing companies operate. That is how large number of service companies operate, right? You find these bank workers, swanky office and all, but the people who are selling the bank products on the road, people who are coming to give you a credit card or taking your detail, direct sale agencies, most of them are almost daily workers, or they at best have a job guarantee of 15 days or a month, right? So large number of people today, because of lack of economic activity, has no money in hand, and then government is trying to push some money through the bank accounts. Jandhan accounts have been opened, and we are hearing some governments have already given. West Bengal government has given, Kerala, UP. So at least they can go to the nearest shop and buy the rice or dal or whatever. Otherwise they will starve to death, right? But then how does it reach them? Even if they have money, if the prices become exorbitant because there is no product, then the rice, if the rice becomes 100 rupees kilo, then they cannot eat, because they will finish off their money just buying rice, 2 kilo of rice or 3 kilo of rice. So you have to keep the supply chain operating, which means the transport sector, we have 2 billion trucks in the country. Now truck drivers are also very scared. How do you encourage them to travel? How do you ensure that their loading, unloading, which is very physical, is done without much of worry, right? Then whatever money you are giving to the people, how do you ensure, or any sort of benefit which you are giving, how do you ensure that there is no corruption, there is no leakage on the way, right? because we are a very corrupt country. We know that. So let's face it. But this is a time where corruption should be at the minimal, because already the people are earning less, and you are giving a fraction of what they would have earned. And if you cut, if there is a cut in that also, then they will be in much bigger trouble. I have kept healthcare as a specific area because if the virus goes out of hand, the healthcare system will be totally collapsed. And it happened. For example, it is already happening in New York. You can see that they are on the Central Park in New York is now hospital. People are lying outside. In Italy, it has happened. In India, it will be much worse, and it will create a lot of social distress. But then we are trying to make the personal protection equipment, the masks, the ventilators, huge activities going on. I mentioned about the informal sector. Large number of people, 97% of the workforce in India doesn't have any sort of security. Then you can't hold the employer to any responsibility if they don't pay money in time and stuff like that. So how does you fix it? You cannot do anything but have to take care with them. A lot of issue will be there with data. Who is the person, whether they have Aadhaar, whether they are in some ration shop, you are giving food in some ration shop, they are in other part of the country. Like, we are all mixed up system. Data is not very accurate in our case. But right now anybody can walk into any ration shop, and if they have a BPL card, below poverty line card, they are getting the ration, which they are not looking at where you are from and all, but how long it can continue. And the last point is that 2 out of 5 Indians are migratory population, right? Now, I am also a migrant. I am sitting in Bangalore and talking to you. Many of you are, but it is a very big issue when you are below poverty line. Why? If you look at the moment the lockdown happened, millions of people who we call urban poor, which we don't even know, they build our roads, they build our houses, they work for us, and they are in the city behind the high rises. The moment it was locked down, they had no faith in the local government or the local society. They said, I have to go back home, and that is the only place I can trust, right? So how do you bring trust to the people so that not only just they stay back where it is and don't go back, but also come back when things are better? Because you have to have this lever for, first of all, we need millions of people to cut our do the harvesting. If the harvesters are not there, your grains will actually get spoiled on the field, and that is the immediate requirement. Then all of the activity, whether it is retail activity, construction activity, road building, everything, you will have to have this labor back. And that is one thing the government will grapple, after giving them some food, is how do you create that confidence that they will go back again from where they came? Otherwise the economy will not pick up. So 97% of the informal sector are people like that, who are at the lower end of the pyramid, and they need that confidence. Then the last one is, of course, the data, some of the references. The left side I have kept as it is. Yesterday I was mentioning about one app which government came up about Arogya Setu, but I came across a lot of controversy. Apparently it is not very safe and all that. So a lot of controversies going on. You can also pick up on the net if you have not seen already. So I have left it away for now. But otherwise it's the same background data, background content. That's it.
One point, sir.
Now new things have come on the right side, new readings. Yeah, you have only 1-2 seconds left. Yeah, go ahead, please.
This is Siddharth. I would like to raise one thing, that apart from isolation, there should be another method which is which can keep people, we can segregate the people, that is a random